see, obviously you're you know your degrees. So as you say, go to the 16, 17. You're familiar. Is that something that you went through with your brothers? Like exactly? Because how I got it, I was with my brothers, and we going back and forth, sparking each other.
Right.
Saying, now Cypher gone. That's not how the degree goes.
Right.
Was that the culture like that here?
For me, no. For me, at first, when I was young, we were all kind of on the same trajectory with 120.
Did you have like an older brother that was like walking you through it, or?
Well, mine Lightner, but he was younger than me. He was just super smart kid.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was 15, I was 16.
Wow.
Excuse me. And K1, and to this day, he's still a super smart brother. I think he's a realtor in Brooklyn somewhere. He's a super smart dude.
Right.
Always has been. The kind of guy that would skip biology and still get A's. It's like, you ain't been in class, God, in 4 days, and you got an A on that test. Like, he's just super intelligent. And so we would all steel sharpen steel. We would all build together.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there was always that kind of camaraderie. But there was no traditional one person and you're my student and I'm gonna do. There was never that. It was always a community thing, which again strengthened the brotherhood. When the knowledge was, and this is again probably the most important time for us in Texas, is when the knowledge was renewed, when WISE came. It was you had that structure of, from my understanding, you had the structure of, you had an educator and you had a student, but even then there was still a community oriented thing, and so brothers would make sure each other had it. But just like a football team, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and so some brothers, after they did 120, were really great at research, and so they would be the ones taking us beyond 120. And not to go too deep into what is done in Egypt.
And you say Egypt, that's Kalim.
That's Kalim.
Right.
Egypt is almost like Wakanda. It's very,
it's cultural.
It's like the understanding, the royal science of God realization is a very powerful thing. And it's so much more than who's the original man to Pluto. It's so much more than that. The question is asked in Egypt. What did God look like before 1964? What did the math look like before Farrar came? Because if the black man wasn't God until Farrar came, then we're in trouble. No beginning, no ending. So it had to look different before Farrar came. The black man was still here. That means the black man was still God. So how did it look? It definitely wasn't, 9 + 1 words on a piece of paper. It has to be much more than that. It's just that when Farrar came, the messenger came, the Father came. That was ancient math brought to modern man in that form. So 120 is what we refer to as a universal key. So I give you a key. So what? You got a key.
Right.
The Bible says, in my Father's house are many mansions. You take that key, God, and you keep going. You cannot, again, that's why that knowledge degree, that first question in the law of family Muslim lesson number 2 is my favorite. because that renewing your history, God, if you do not renew your history, you will be the guy standing around with a fancy, pretty key. And you can't go or walk into any other room. But you look good holding the key, don't get me wrong. But you can't go in any other room. And so in Egypt, it is paramount that you love what you're doing. You have 120, you know it by heart, and you're prepared to go in them other rooms. And so I say that to say, in Egypt, you may have one main guy, Hakim Universal Life Allah, probably the most effective teachers I've ever known. Good brother.
And
Through and
he
through.
was so effective in teaching.
He would say he's not, but Hakim is effective because he structures the teaching based on the individual. So there may be some fundamentals that you will cover, because just like with 120, let no unlearned man enter. You do the degrees because you have to. That's part of our culture. There are some fundamental concepts that must be in place to even wear this flag. To say you one of us, there must be some fundamental things in place, okay? But then, aside from that, how you are as an individual, because we don't believe in teaching ego. We remove the ego, then we take you further. Because if we take you further and you still got that ego, then there's a problem. So it's just like, you could take the jungle out the cat, but you can't take you could take the cat out the jungle, but you can't take the jungle out the cat. Well, yeah, no, we're going to remove the jungle out the cat. It's very important because some of this information can be used. It's a thin line between the 5% and the 10%, God. It's a very thin line. A 10% is nothing but a 5% misusing what he knows. It's a very, very thin line.
They both know.
Because they both know. It's just that one chooses to use that information for self-gain. And so that line, you can cross that line if the character of the person is not right. And so Hawk he'll expose that, and he's a great teacher in the sense that, to answer your question, because he'll modify the teaching for the person. It's just not some basic syllabus and some basic curriculum that you follow, and then you're in. Like, no.
Right.
If Mecca did this.